What if the world decided you were guilty, boy, before a single shred of evidence ever spoke? What if a smile, a kiss, or even a moment of grief was twisted into proof of murder? What if the story told about you was louder, darker, and more powerful than the truth itself? This isn't fiction. It happened to Amanda Knox, a 20-year-old exchange student who came to Italy searching for adventure and instead found herself trapped in a nightmare, branded as a killer, convicted of murder, locked away for nearly 4 years for a crime she didn't commit. This is not just the story of Amanda Knox. This is a story of how wrongful convictions are built on fear, spectacle, and failure, and how innocence can be buried beneath the weight of the world's judgment. This is Innocence Uncovered, where we expose the truth the system tried to bury. I'm Isaac, and today we reopen the case. Before you decide what you believe about Amanda Knox, ask yourself this: if it happened to her, could it happen to you? Because this isn't just her story. It's about the power of media, the failures of justice, and the terrifying truth that innocence is never enough. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you might question everything you thought you knew. November 1st, 2007. Perugia, Italy. The medieval hillside city is alive with students. Thousands from across the world who come here to study, to experience, to live. Among them is Meredith Kercher, a 21-year-old from South London, studying abroad for the adventure of a lifetime. She is bright, ambitious, full of warmth. But just 3 months into her Italian dream, Meredith's life would be stolen in the most brutal way imaginable. And her death would spark one of the most infamous wrongful conviction cases of the 21st century. The morning after Halloween, police are called to a quiet villa on Via della Pergola. Inside Meredith's bedroom, a nightmare. The door is locked, blood seeps from beneath. When they force it open, they find her body on the floor. She has been stabbed. The scene is chaotic, blood everywhere, signs of struggle. The horror is unspeakable. Living in the same villa is Amanda Knox, a 20-year-old exchange student from Seattle, Washington. Amanda had been in Italy for only a few weeks. She was learning the language, working part-time at a bar, dating her new boyfriend, Raffaele Sollecito. Her life had only just begun. But in the eyes of the Italian police, Amanda Knox was about to become the prime suspect. What followed would be a legal circus, a trial built not on hard evidence, but on headlines. A young woman branded Foxy Knoxy, the Femme Fatale, by a hungry press corps, and years of prison time for a crime she did not commit. This is not just the story of a murder. It's the story of how justice can collapse when the truth is buried beneath narrative. And it begins with a night of confusion, a crime scene in chaos, and a police investigation that chose suspects first and evidence second. From the very first day, the investigation into Meredith Kercher's murder began not with answers, but with questions. Questions that would be twisted, bent, and weaponized against Amanda Knox. The crime scene itself was a nightmare. Blood spattered across the bed sheets, footprints tracked through the hallway, a broken window, a locked bedroom door. But here's the truth. From the very start, police mishandled nearly everything. The scene was contaminated. Officers walked through rooms without protective gear. Evidence was moved, touched, even lost. And in those crucial early hours, the possibility of a fair trial began slipping away. Instead of waiting for DNA analysis, instead of letting the evidence speak, the investigators made a choice. They chose their suspects, and they chose Amanda Knox. Why Amanda? because she didn't act the way they thought she should. She smiled. She kissed her boyfriend outside the villa. She stretched. She did a cartwheel inside the police station after hours of questioning. To investigators, these were not the nervous tics of a scared 20-year-old. They were the signs of a guilty woman. But let's be clear. Amanda wasn't the only one under suspicion. Her boyfriend, Raffaele Solicito, was also questioned, and a local bar owner, Patrick Lumumba, was dragged into the storm. But the key suspect the evidence pointed to, Rudy Ged, a man with a criminal past whose fingerprints and DNA were all over Meredith's room. He would not be the first focus. Instead, investigators zeroed in on Amanda and Raphael. Why? Because Amanda was different. She was American. She was young. She was open, expressive, and didn't fit the cultural script of the grieving girl. And in Perugia's tight-knit conservative society, that was enough to look like guilt. In wrongful conviction cases, this is the moment, the fork in the road, the place where investigators stop searching for truth and start building a story. And the story they built was simple, lurid, and sensational. Amanda Knox, the manipulative American. Raphael Solicito, the loyal accomplice. Together they murdered Meredith in a twisted sex game gone wrong. But there was no physical evidence to support this. None. No DNA from Amanda in Meredith's room. No fingerprints. Nothing that tied her to the murder weapon. Nothing. Still, suspicion hardened into accusation, and accusation hardened into obsession. By November 5th, just 4 days after Meredith's body was discovered, police summoned Amanda for questioning. It was supposed to be routine, but it would become one of the most infamous interrogations in modern criminal history. This was the moment where innocence would be buried under pressure, where a scared young woman, alone in a foreign country, without a lawyer, without food, without sleep, would be broken. And from that broken night came a statement that would haunt Amanda Knox for years. The story was no longer about evidence, it was about confession, and it was about to change everything. It was the middle of the night, November 5th, 2007. Inside Perugia's police headquarters, Amanda Knox was called in for what she thought would be another round of questions. She was 20 years old. She had no lawyer. She had no sleep. And what was about to happen would change the course of her life forever. For hours, Amanda was grilled. Questions repeated over and over. Detectives raised their voices, slammed papers down, told her she was lying. Every word she spoke was twisted. Every hesitation was a sign of guilt. Every protest was dismissed. And when she couldn't remember details, they supplied them. Psychologists call this coercive interrogation, sleep deprivation, isolation, accusations repeated until they feel like truth. And when the suspect breaks, when exhaustion blurs into confusion, false memories are born. And Amanda Knox broke. Pressed past the point of clarity, she signed a statement placing herself at the villa. But not just herself. She wrote that she remembered her boss, Patrick Lumumba, being there too. It was incoherent. It was contradictory. It was the desperate rambling of a young woman in shock. But to police, it was gold. The confession they had been waiting for. Within hours, the story was splashed across Italian headlines. Amanda Knox and Raphael Solicito arrested for the brutal murder of Meredith Kercher. And Patrick Lumumba, an innocent man, dragged away in handcuffs. But here's the truth. Amanda's so-called confession didn't match the evidence. Her story shifted, contradicted itself, collapsed under its own weight. And Patrick Lumumba, he had a rock-solid alibi. He wasn't anywhere near the villa. Yet he spent 2 weeks in prison because of a coerced statement that never should have existed. This is the cost of tunnel vision. An innocent man in prison. Another suspect, Rudy Gued, still free. And Amanda Knox transformed in the public eye into a manipulative femme fatale. In those early hours of November 6th, 2007, truth became irrelevant. What mattered now was the story. A story of lust, jealousy, and murder. A story the tabloids couldn't resist. A story that would turn Amanda Knox from a foreign student into an international villain. But the evidence told a different story. And in the middle of this storm, Amanda Knox would discover what it truly means to be wrongfully accused. Trials are supposed to be about facts, evidence, truth. But in the case of Amanda Knox and Rafael Solicito, the trial became a stage, and Amanda, she became the performance. From the moment Amanda walked into court, the world was watching. The Italian press called her Foxy Knoxy. The American media called her the angel-faced killer, and prosecutors painted her as something far darker. They said she was cold. They said she was manipulative. They said she was a femme fatale who had orchestrated a sex game gone wrong. But there was a problem with that theory. It had no evidence, no fingerprints, no DNA, no trace of Amanda or Raphael in Meredith Kercher's bedroom, the actual crime scene. The only DNA that matched belonged to Rudy Gued. And yet, Amanda and Raphael sat in the defendant's box. How do two innocent people end up standing trial for a murder that evidence points elsewhere? The answer lies in something more powerful than truth: narrative. Prosecutor Giuliano Mignini had a story of lust, of jealousy, of a young American who couldn't handle her roommate's rejection and turned to violence. It was a story made for tabloids. It was a story made for headlines, and once released, it consumed everything else. Day after day, prosecutors hammered away. Amanda was painted as erratic, promiscuous, unfeeling. Her behavior, smiling, nervously kissing Raphael outside the police station, was weaponized. To them, it wasn't a scared 20-year-old under siege. It was a murderer flaunting her guilt. Never mind that grief looks different for everyone. Never mind that Amanda was still in shock. Never mind the actual forensic record. The prosecution's narrative, their story, was louder, and the world believed it. In that courtroom, Amanda Knox wasn't just a defendant, she was a character, written by prosecutors, published by tabloids, performed for an audience of millions. And then came the moment. December 2009, after nearly 2 years in custody, the verdict was read. Guilty. Amanda Knox. 26 years in prison. Rafael Solicito. 25 years. The courtroom erupted. For prosecutors. Victory for tabloids. The perfect ending. But for Amanda Knox, it was the beginning of a nightmare. This was no longer about justice. It was about a story. And the truth was buried alive. After the verdict, Amanda Knox sat in a prison cell in Italy, condemned to spend most of her life behind bars. But outside those prison walls, another battle was beginning. A battle not of headlines, but of hard science. In Italy, appeals are not just paperwork. They're a second trial, a second chance to look at the evidence. And when Amanda's defense team took that chance, what they uncovered would shake the foundations of the case. The case against Amanda rested on two critical pieces of evidence: a kitchen knife taken from Raphael's apartment, and a bra clasp collected from Meredith Kercher's bedroom. Prosecutors claimed the knife had Amanda's DNA on the handle and Meredith's DNA on the blade. The clasp, they said, carried Raphael's DNA. It sounded damning, But when independent experts reviewed the evidence, the story collapsed. The knife? The supposed murder weapon? It didn't match Meredith's wounds. It was too long, too wide. And that so-called DNA trace of Meredith, it was so minuscule. It could not be tested reliably. Experts called it what it was: contamination. The bra clasp, said to contain Raphael's DNA, was even worse. Police had waited 46 days before collecting it. By then, the crime scene had been trampled by dozens of investigators. When experts looked closer, the DNA on that clasp wasn't a clean profile. It was a cocktail of mixed, degraded samples, far too compromised to prove anything. The defense didn't just poke holes in the prosecution's case. They shredded it. No reliable DNA, no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses. Meanwhile, Rudy Goed, the one person undeniably linked to the crime, had already been convicted in a separate fast-track trial. His DNA was everywhere. On Meredith's clothes, inside her body, on her purse. His bloody handprints stained the walls. If Guede's presence was undeniable, why were Amanda and Raphael still in prison? The answer, once again, wasn't evidence. It was narrative. Prosecutors clung to their sex game theory, the media clung to their headlines, and public opinion still painted Amanda as guilty. But science doesn't care about headlines, and slowly, truth began to fight its way back. In October 2011, the appeal verdict was read. After 4 years behind bars, Amanda Knox and Raphael Solitato were acquitted. The courtroom gasped. Amanda sobbed. Raphael buried his face in his hands. The narrative had finally cracked, and yet, the story wasn't over. For Amanda Knox, freedom was not the end. Because once a story this big, this scandalous, takes hold of the world, it refuses to let go. Can you ever really walk free if the world refuses to believe you? For Amanda Knox, freedom in 2011 was supposed to be the end of a nightmare. But what came next was a cruel twist, almost unthinkable. Her acquittal wasn't the end. It was the beginning of yet another battle. In Italy, prosecutors don't simply lose and walk away. The system allows appeals, even after acquittals. So Amanda Knox, living back home in the United States, suddenly learned the Italian legal machine wasn't done with her. In 2013, Italy's Supreme Court of Cassation overturned the acquittal. Amanda Knox and Raphael Solitato were once again defendants. For Amanda, safe in Seattle, it felt like a ghost reaching across the ocean to drag her back. Imagine it. You've spent 4 years in prison. You've been freed by an appeals court, and then the highest judges in the land declare, not so fast, we want to try you again. The new trial in Florence replayed the same script, the same weak DNA evidence, the same sensational theories. Prosecutors doubled down, and in January 2014, lightning struck twice. Amanda Knox was convicted again. 28 years, behind bars, in absentia. She was thousands of miles away, but once again branded a killer. Raphael Solitato, her co-defendant, wasn't so lucky. He was in Italy. He was dragged back into the machinery of prison, fighting for his life once again. And yet, even then, doubt was everywhere. Experts worldwide mocked the so-called science behind the case. Journalists called it a circus. Human rights advocates warned. This was no longer about justice. It was about pride and saving face. Amanda lived in fear. If Italy demanded her extradition, would the U.S. hand her over? Would she be shipped back to prison for decades? For a year, Amanda Knox lived in limbo, free in America, but convicted abroad. Her life balanced on the edge of international law, and then the final twist. In 2015, Italy's highest court delivered its last word. Amanda Knox, Raffaele Solicito, acquitted. This time, definitively. Finally, the nightmare was over. 8 years, 4 trials, 2 wrongful convictions. Amanda Knox was finally free. But freedom couldn't erase what those years had stolen. Her youth, her reputation, her peace of mind. And for Meredith Kercher's family, closure remained impossible. The truth had been swallowed in a storm of error, ego, and spectacle. And so, the Amanda Knox case stands not only as a tragedy, but as a warning of how the pursuit of truth can be lost when fear, ego, and media frenzy take its place. Eight years, 4 trials, 2 wrongful convictions, 1 final acquittal. Amanda Knox walked away from Italy a free woman. But freedom is not the same thing as innocence, at least not in the court of public opinion. In the United States, Amanda's story divided millions. Some believed she was a victim of injustice. Others, fueled by tabloids and biased coverage, were convinced she had gotten away with murder. The truth was buried under years of sensationalism. And through it all, Meredith Kercher's family still grieved. They never found peace in endless retrials. Their daughter's memory became a pawn in a courtroom chess game. But Amanda Knox's story is bigger than Amanda Knox, because for every headline, every front page photo, there are thousands more people whose names we will never know. People who were wrongfully convicted. People still sitting in prison cells waiting to be believed. According to the National Registry of Exonerations, over 3,500 people in the U.S. have been freed after wrongful convictions. But that number is just the beginning. Experts say for every exoneree, countless more remain invisible, silenced by the weight of the system. Amanda Knox now uses her voice to speak for them. She has written, spoken, and campaigned on behalf of those still fighting for their lives. She is no longer just a symbol of scandal. She is a warning and a call to action. Injustice has many faces. Sometimes it looks like contaminated evidence. Sometimes it looks like media hysteria. And sometimes it looks like pride. The Amanda Knox case wasn't just about one young woman accused of murder. It was about what happens when truth is sacrificed for certainty, and when justice is bent to fit a story. So we ask again, if it could happen to Amanda Knox, who else could it happen to? And how many more are still waiting? For Innocence Uncovered, like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.